Another thing a lawsuit does is it puts an umbrella of protection over you in the precinct you're in or the jurisdiction you're in, because every cop knows that you've sued that police agency and have a federal court lawsuit pending, so any attacks on you after that look like harassment. We're doing volume 3, and one of the chapters is how to sue a cop for under $500. So I'd go that route, man. I'd start filing the lawsuits.
Do you have any plans to address election fraud through the voting machines, electronic voting, computer voting, and other areas of election fraud?
He asked, did I have any plans to combat election fraud? I don't know enough about it to know exactly how things are how fraud is being committed, but I'm a trained enough detective that all I'd have to do is study it for a little bit and make a few phone calls, and I would know how to better answer that question. Yes, this is how I do it. Since I don't know the interworkings of the watch, I'll just tell you the watch. Yeah, of course, as Attorney General, if there's any type of voter fraud, I'll do whatever it takes to stop that. So we really know who the people are electing.
I'm specifically talking about mainly the computer voting, where it can be manipulated by behind the scenes by technicians. The results can. No matter what the vote is, they can change it just by manipulating the software.
So that's the inside, you're explaining the inside of that watch, and right. I don't know enough about that to tell you how I would stop it.
Diebold runs the equipment, and they can punch it in so that 96% of the vote goes to you. In reality, the
where do I go find these people?
The voters come and they vote 96% for you and 2% Democrat and 2% Republican, but a Democrat or Republican will win because the computer is rigged.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to look at the Vote Rescue organization.
Vote Rescue with Beth Harris and Vicki.
Right here in Austin.
Good people. Well, if the vote's rigged, then we're still going to create a lot of damage here in Texas. As a civilian, I'll keep busting crooked cops.
Right,
I'll keep busting
them. You have to get voted in first. And if they
I believe I'm going to get voted in. There might be some conspiracy-minded people that think I don't have a chance. Don't let that cloud your good judgment to get involved in my campaign. Get involved. Let's kick that ass across Texas and show these people what a real campaign is about, what Texans are really about. Texans are supposed to stand up. So that's what we're about. Let's say there is fraud out there, and it's all rigged, and I won't get elected because of that. So what? Let's drive and make this attempt anyway, because I see myself in that Capitol. It's not a pipe dream for me.
I see you there, too.
Yeah. You know, they said I could never, first they said I'd never be a cop, and I went to be a cop. They said, you'd never do what you did there, and I did. They told me I'd never have a cage fighting company, did that. Said, you know, releasing DVDs, and they say, busting cops. What do you mean busting cops? Now there's a few going, damn, he might win Attorney General now. Yes.
Since it's so prevalent in the culture of police culture, like, you know, they have the fraternal order of police, and basically, I mean, a lot of people might not know this, but they do kind of look at us as the enemy. They see us, and they're like, that's somebody to taser if they look at me wrong. You know, if you were Attorney General, how can you, not just with laws, but any ways and means, how can you affect, because internal affairs, I mean, if they're having barbecues on the weekends with all these guys who are investigating, they're all buddies, what are they really doing? I mean, police corruption is so prevalent. It's everywhere on TV, and the media is just like, they don't say, was that wrong? You know, they beat that guy in Birmingham, Alabama, and he was unconscious. And people think, well, that's just random. Well, you know, maybe it is, but
it's not random.
If it's just one person, that's more than enough. What happened with Rodney King, we should have been infuriated. Every American in this room,
the thing, he was black.
Exactly. That's the problem. Now, how do we get over that?
You know, the black people have been telling us all along that our cops are crazy, and we didn't listen to it until they started putting Whitey in jail. So that's what happened. They got 1 in every 9 black males locked up in prison. They got over a 10th of the black male. Our black male Americans that I went to school with got them locked up in a cage.
Right. So how do we get that culture of these cops thinking we're the enemy and their internal affairs, police, the war on drugs? How do we stop that? How do we get that into their minds? So that's
he asked a question that is dear to my heart, because one has to get to the root of a problem. You can't just keep cutting the fruit, because it'll pop back up. He asked, how are you going to get rid of that attitude that's embedded in the mind of cops as a whole? How do you get rid of that personality? Here's how you do it. You fire their ass and just start getting rid of them. Start paying the cops a little more to draw good people in that do have compassion, that do understand. It's not going to take ruling them to death. Let me tell you what. When I start this, their attitudes are going to fight it and resist it. And it's going to have to be a layer of just firing them and get rid of them, not trying to convert them. Because there's 3 or 4 generations of these type of people.
Yeah.
It's deep.
Yeah.
So we've got to get rid of the culture that causes law enforcement to abuse people. It's like when a 17-year-old black kid gets out and shoots a cop. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody's, black kid kills cop. And they have all of this thing, about the cop's dead. The cop's dead. Ooh, the cop, oh, the horrible black kid. What in our culture in America, the richest country in our nation, would cause a kid to get out and start shooting the cops? Fix that first. I'll tell you what it is. It's a generation of abuse and deep-seated hate. I would never shoot a cop, but I understand why some people do. Because they are a picture of, I'm about to experience hell in my life, and they don't care. So you hit a button. You're right. It's an attitude that needs to change.
Paradigm.
And it's so deeply ingrained. It's like the Nazi forces. Dude, we're going to have to sue it out of them, fire it out of them, and I'll be the boss of all of them and make sure it happens. Get some real men and real women in here working law enforcement. Not these crazed people that show up to a scene looking who they can arrest.
And takes her 72-year-old grandma.
Yeah, not who they can help. Instead of showing up, how can I help you? They're like, who can I arrest? I'm like, damn, man. Smoke some weed or something. Dude, you're way too serious about it.
Yes.
I think part of getting at the root of the problem is where these cops are going out and enforcing these laws and getting a similar program which is talking about busting the cops, busting the council people on the councils that make the laws in the cities. Give you, for instance, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was homeless and I was minding my own business down at the park down here, Rollers Park. I had some gout on my foot and I had my hat over, and a cop comes up and talks to me and gives me a ticket for sleeping under an oak tree. That's actually what he wrote on the ticket. Sleeping under an oak tree. And I said, how? Do you have such a law? He said, no, well, it's part of the street ordinance. Huh? Part of the street ordinance.
I said, what about pine trees? Are maple trees illegal?
We need to start
How about
busting some of these
cedar?
people who make such ridiculous laws on the city councils as being unconstitutional.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I
We need
agree.
a similar program.
I agree. There's corruption and craziness. Yes.
I shouldn't ask this, but because I'm not an attorney, I'm asking just as a question. Under what authority does government have the right or ability to prohibit anything? Because my understanding is under common law there must be a victim.
He asked a good question. Under what authority does the government have to prohibit anything? They have the authority to do what our parents and grandparents and the older people of this country allowed them to do because they got caught up voting their checkbooks instead of their freedoms. They slipped it in on us. Harry Anslinger in 1937, he was the prohibition one of the high law enforcement